Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, and You Show. This episode is being brought to you by Trailblazing Communications, tools to take back your life. Well, folks, as the saying goes, the good things still keep on coming, and we have another great guest for this episode. With me today, I have a woman that has been doing great things, not only for animals, but people, and she's here to talk about those projects today. Is Susan Bahary, or is it
Bahary?
Bahary? There we go. I said it
Bahary.
correctly. Yeah, all right. But Susan is one of the foremost artists specializing in bronze and unique medium of fine art acrylic and stainless steel. Her sculptures of equine, canine, and human subjects have been featured in such national media as CNN, Fox News, NBC, Discovery Channel, among others. She's everywhere. Her works can be found in museums, veterinary schools, military bases, and public installations nationwide, and been featured in many films and books. Susan created our country's first official war dog memorial, Always Faithful, that was unveiled at the Pentagon and dedicated to the U.S. Marine Corps War Dog Cemetery. Can't even read today. In Guam in 1994, and she has since been a leader in raising awareness of and support for their deeds and sacrifices. Susan's sculptures are collected by noted authorities and art collectors in the equine and canine world, including royal families, and she accepts and selects private and public commissions. Susan, welcome to the Red, White, and You Show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It was so fascinating. I was kind of taking some time to do some, if you will, some snooping, let me get to know what the internet and the paper tells me, right? And I was so fascinated that, and we're going to get into your other works, but you did was it a life, or not a life size, but a likeness of Laura Bush, correct?
Yes.
And you did some other ones, and your intro kind of talks about, there was some royal families in there, and you've really been around. How many years have you been sculpting?
I started in '89.
Oh, wow.
Professionally, and started with sculpting dogs, which is something I knew and loved, and then expanded into monuments starting 1994 and into other mediums, including, as you mentioned, the fine art acrylic, the bronze, the stainless steel.
Well, I know your website has it listed as acrylic, and maybe and obviously I'm not a trained eye, but it almost looks like crystal to me. And if you go to her website and check it out, it's just really fascinating. If you go to BaharyStudios.com, and we'll have the website up so where everybody can go check that out, and also photos of that here on the show later. But it's just so it's beautiful work. But let's back up a little bit. And so really what Susan and I were chatting a little bit before we went live and talking about really, of course, the premise of the Red, White, and You Show and her latest project, The Pledge, and really honoring all the women of the United States armed or military, post, present, and future. Do you want to give the listeners and viewers a little bit of premise of what that is and kind of the background of that project?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Well, I was honored to get a commission by the United States War Dogs Association, known for helping our war dogs and our handlers both abroad when they're on active duty, getting them critical supplies, as well as when they get home, bringing them back, reuniting the handlers and the dogs, and helping to pay for their expenses with health and other needs they have. And so this great organization, United States War Dogs Association, commissioned me to do a monument to honor all our female military working dog handlers and all women of the military. And so they approached the Women's Memorial in Arlington at the gate of Arlington National Cemetery. And they very much wanted to accept this gift and have embraced it so beautifully. And really what it is, it's our country's, the nation's first, I should say the nation's capital's first monument honoring all women of the military, regardless of branch, regardless of past, present, or future. It's for all our women. And so we had the unveiling on October 17th, and it's now open to the public at the Women's Memorial, which is a great repository for the history of our women. They ask all women to register themselves and families there. They educate, they inspire, and they're growing. We had an amazing unveiling ceremony. It was one of the most incredible experiences I've had in my life. I mean, we worked so hard on these pieces,
Right.
but the greatest reward is what happened afterwards. You know, women of the military come over and really had tears, eyes filled with tears, and so grateful to have this, and that's so beautiful, makes it all worthwhile, and it also. I mean, it speaks volumes about them. I mean, they have so much gratitude for this, and they have tears in their eyes. But I mean, we're the ones that need to be going at them, you know, with tears in their eyes, saying thank you for putting your lives on the line for the rest of us. So that's the thing about men and women in the military, and even our faithful animals of all kinds that go out there. Of course, they do it for us. That are so selfless in that regard, and it's what inspires all my work in this kind of work that I do for those who serve.
Well, it's just very powerful and very cool. Now, take us through a little bit. Now, why is it titled The Pledge? Is there something specific about that?
Yeah, there is. You know, I knew, and I spoke to U.S. War Dogs. We really wanted to get to the core of many elements, you know, the service and sacrifice of our women, the bond between the dog and the handler. And so when I thought about it, you know, you think about things and you feel things.
That's true.
and it happened at the same time. I just felt that connection, and being a dog lover and being someone in this world for a long time and having raised and trained dogs. And I mean, I understand the connection, and I've studied it. And so since it represents, I mean, such a important and large spectrum of people, women in the military, I felt that it had to go to the core of what they do, which is they pledge their allegiance, they pledge themselves to protect and defend our country. And so I wanted to demonstrate that, but at the same time, I know that they've got that sense of duty, they've got courage, they've got ability, and they've got compassion. And so wanted to combine, which was wonderful to do artistically, to be able to combine all of those elements of their strength and their capability and their greatness, along with their compassion and the bond they can form. And, you know, we've got your back, as Phyllis Wilson of the Women's Memorial said it so well. It's that thing in the military, you know, I've got your back, you know. And,
right.
And so that's the pledge, and it's also their pledge to each other. It's the pledge of our female military working dog handler to her entire country, you know, what she does. But it's also their unspoken pledge, the dog and the handler, to do the same and to keep each other safe and have a successful mission together. And it's that moment before, it's that private moment together, staring into each other's eyes, hand on paw, right before they go into battle. And the woman is in full combat gear, so you don't see that very often. I felt that was very important. It's one of the most dangerous jobs you can have in the military. So by putting her in that combat gear, and the right, you know, her rifle slung on her back, and her gun, and just all that, but at the same time to show that emotion and that bond that's everlasting. That was quite a contrast of love and duty to portray.
You know, it's interesting, Susan, is we've had artists on the show before, and talking about the military working dog, not just a working dog, but the handler as well, and the connection, the bond between the human, really, well, we could probably just say, suffice to say, the human species and the animal itself, but more importantly, the deeper heartfelt connection between the handler and the dog, right? And how deep a, almost like a, do you want to say like a spiritual or a heart bond connection, right? That you just, very intimate. But one of the things I wanted to ask is the sculptures based on real individuals? Did you have a soldier and her dog actually kind of come in and take some photos, or how did that process go? Because I know that you could probably base it on, emphasis on this, but if you could share with us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because what I forgot to mention about the pledge was it was very important to have it represent everyone. It could be any woman. I wanted every woman to be able to see herself in it in some way, hopefully. And with the dogs, it represents all dogs. And so when I was sculpting it, I didn't have a model, but I'd looked at many photos of diverse women, diverse in every way, and kind of had a look at that, and then used my imagination and came up with her face. As terms of the dogs, same thing. I had several photographs, but I also had a wonderful model that came in. And although the dog is a female, as it should be in the monument, this was a male, but he had the essence and a lot of the qualities that helped me create the piece. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the website right now, or your website, I should share, and of the actual monument. And I believe it's the actual dedication ceremony. I'm looking at the sculpture, and I was thinking, I know you're a very prolific sculptor and can convey so much through your sculptures, your art. And I was like, but boy, I can't remember. And because I was looking at them earlier, and I was like, boy, that'd be really hard to do that. And because you brought up a great point, this female soldier was in all combat equipment. Combat equipment is not flattering. You don't, looking at somebody wearing, if you didn't know their gender from maybe the way they're wearing their hair or whatever, it doesn't reveal anything. You don't look feminine. You don't look masculine. You just look like you're carrying a lot of gear, right? And I look at the soldier kneeling and kind of having, as the dog has the paw on the knee, and then the soldier kind of the hand underneath the jowl area. And where one of the thing I think it's really cool that you captured almost the femininity of the female warrior. And so almost the longer hair, in a sense of, you think of a female soldier would, in the scope of her duties. And, it's just really fascinating to me how you were able to convey some of those nuances, and instead of just being very, how do I want to say, outside of the box, you really conveyed a lot, and something that was a hard platform to do so.
Well, thanks for recognizing that.
Yeah.
That definitely was one of the great challenges of this piece. It's actually quite a difficult piece technically, from many points of view, creating
Sure.
it and the casting of it and all the elements that have to line up exactly right. But I like the challenge of that. The the way I went about that was by first sculpting the female form without the clothes, the
Sure.
female
Yep.
form, and then you add the clothes.
Yep.
And yes, when you add the clothes, you're going to lose a lot of the female form, but there's going to be a little bit there if you look from the
Right.
back. And you look at the hands, and of course the face, and the hair pulled in a bun. But I liked what General John Nicholson said at the ceremony. He said when he first came over, he noticed a soldier.
Yeah.
And there was a dog with a soldier. But then as he got closer, he noticed that it was a female soldier. And I think that's the whole point, is that they can do what the men can do, and that we should see them as soldiers first.
Well, another thing, this brings up another point. We a previous episode back when this show actually used to be on the radio, and we actually had a current serving female soldier from Fort Hood who's a beauty pageant contestant. And so she's a beauty queen, but she was breaking the stereotypes of it's okay to look feminine and be in the military, right? So you kind of have this, you think of this macho male warrior mentality that you must be a certain way. And it's great that you brought up about this, General, because anybody that's ever maybe followed soldiers at night, if you look at the back of their equipment, it just looks like an outline. But anybody that does it long enough, you get to know who the individuals are based on their outline. And it's because not only you give off your own vibe, we'll call it, but also you the nuances of the individual, right? It's might be so slight, but it makes a big difference.
And there's another part of it too. Did I interrupt?
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
You made me think of something else. In the sculpting of the piece, there are feminine curves in the wrinkle, in the folds of the clothing. The handling of the piece has that in it too. So that's just another little
right. Well, no, I think it all every step or everything that you thought out, Susan, it really obviously conveys and exudes everything that it was meant to. So really just kudos to not only your work, but and I also want to really add that this not only, obviously it really does. The female doesn't have to be serving as a dog handler. It speaks to all female U.S. military members. And that's, I think, to me, which is very powerful, because there's getting to be more, but there's not a lot of things out there honoring the female veteran. And, and they serving and things are changing for the better. But I want to stay on your I don't want to get derailed here. I want to stay on your projects. So take us with a little bit, because I have no frame of reference. Now, when you're doing bronze, is that sculpting in clay, and then is it dipped in bronze, or what is the process of
it's
of
quite
that?
a lengthy process. This piece, from the first discussion of it and feeling and emotion about it and research to the final unveiling, took like a year and a half. Well, we had the COVID as well, delaying things. And what first you start with the emotion, the feeling, the sketch, and then you build like an armature, which is like a skeleton of the pieces. And then you add the clay. When the clay is done, then a rubber mold is made by mold maker, and that's divided in many pieces, the heads, the tails, the legs, maybe 24 pieces or more. and their wax is poured in the mold at the foundry, and then I check the waxes, and then the waxes are screwed. There's the rods and funnels that are attached to each wax piece, and that entire thing gets dipped in a ceramic shell bath over a period of a week to form a hard shell. And then the molten bronze is poured into the funnel, down the rods in there, and when it cools, the shell is laboriously chiseled off at a foundry, which takes a lot of work.
Sure.
And then all the pieces are welded together exactly right. And then they have to be, because you can't even be off by 1/4 of an inch for a piece like this, especially. And, you can't have the eyes looking away from the dog,
Right.
The paw's not reaching the knee.
Right. It might be a little problematic, right?
Trust me. Yeah. And then it takes all the metal finishing work that goes into that. And then the patina, which is the heating with the blowtorch of the metal and the chemicals that are put on the metal to become molecularly oxidation part of the piece.
Wow.
The 8 colors. And then there's the waxing, but that piece would take, let's say, 3 months in the foundry, and I oversee all the steps. So it takes many talented people along the way to help a sculptor, foundry workers that are all very skilled to help the process.
Right. Well, and it's great analogy too, that just like in the military, right? We all rely on each other. We all have to know that, hey, I got your back and you got mine, right? So, and relying on each other. But yeah, it just, I didn't even fathom like how many steps it takes or what's involved in doing a bronze, something like that. And it's just, fascinating to me. But that was going to be one of my questions. You did talk about COVID a little bit. What are some challenges that COVID has presented with this? Everybody I know is, well, I know everybody is experiencing challenges at some level in all areas of life. However, when it comes to this project specifically, what are some things that you've noticed or some of the challenges that may be presented that you...
Well, it wasn't a huge thing because I have a really reliable foundry, but because I'm in California and we were dealing with a shutdown.
Sure.
We originally were going to unveil on Memorial Day in May. Well, it didn't get
problematic,
unveiled until October
right?
17th because of COVID.
Sure.
So there were a lot of starts and stops along the way, but just like the military, you got to be can-do about these things.
Adapt and overcome, right?
Exactly.
Just shift fire, keep on going.
I love
it.
Ceremony, they did a beautiful job as well. I mean, we were socially distanced. They pulled it off just beautifully. And it's an event. They're all these sculptures and all these events are like my children.
Right.
But this truly was a very remarkable and meaningful event to be in such a sacred place at Arlington, at the gate of Arlington Cemetery, the women's room.
What an honor to have your monument at Arlington. I mean,
it is an honor. I've got to say something though, as much as that is an honor for me as an artist, and it truly is.
Right. Yeah.
What motivates me is that when I'm gone, I want to feel like when I'm gone, I've left pieces behind that will inspire and educate and will have a lasting positive effect on future generations. And I'm an older person now, and I constantly see when is that end going to be? And I just hope I can fit in all these projects that I think need to be done.
Sure.
And that I think I'm well suited for, so that I can leave that behind, and hopefully it'll have a positive effect.
Well, maybe inspire somebody else to pick up the artistic trade as well and to carry on maybe that legacy as well, Susan.
I do. I have a young woman that might be calling me that wanted to learn about this work. And I'm at that stage where I'm very busy, but I still want to pass along what I can. Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to come back to some of your other projects. But I want to talk about your purple poppy pin. And it is the first U.S. international purple poppy pin honoring all animals who served in the military, law enforcement, and other service members. And throughout the world since World War I, of course, everybody knows the red poppy, and I'm reading this course direct off the website, has represented the sacrifice of brave soldiers. And now they have a purple poppy pin for the service and sacrifice of the service members, here, obviously here in the U.S. And of course, this is through the National Service Animal Monument, correct?
Correct. And I don't know if this would work, but I happen to have one of the packaged pins.
Wow.
Can you see it?
Yes. Yeah, there. Perfect. There you go.
And you might see that it's got the horse, the dog, and the carrier pigeon.
Beautiful.
I designed it.
You did? Well, imagine that.
My first like jewelry thing. But because there's so many animals that have served us since the founding of our country. And so to explain the purple poppy and the National Service Animals Monument, they're two separate things. But they work hand in hand. I was asked by the Australian War Animals Memorial Organization, for whom I've done many projects around the world, to bring this purple poppy to the United States. They have it in Australia, New Zealand, in the UK, very celebrated, very beautiful thing. And so I was honored to have that task, and I still am honored to do that. And February 24th is the International Day to celebrate our animals and their handlers. And in our country, it represents all the kinds of service animals and handlers that we have. And so does the National Service Animals Monument. This is a project that I'm the sculptor for, that I envisioned, and that a charity has taken over. And we are currently looking for the best city for it, and getting working on status as a national monument through Congress, through a bill by Congress.
Very cool.
And so this would be like a national treasure. Imagine that you walk into a park setting or a plaza setting, and you see all these types of animals, which are on the website, National Service Animals Monument or Bahary Studios. And you approach this, and it's a place of introspection, of education, of inspiration, where you can learn and be entertained and learn at the same time, whether you're a child or an adult, all the amazing things that our animals have done alongside of us, whether in the military, law enforcement, search and rescue, as assistance animals that do so much for our veterans and for our civilians that they can't do for themselves, guide dog pairs, and there's even a component for our shelter animals to raise awareness and support. So this monument would raise awareness and support by educating and inspiring. And and the purple poppy represents all of this. So actually, the charity sells these pins to help build the monument. And aside from that, and after the monument's built, this purple poppy movement goes on to raise awareness and support for that. And we have charities that want to buy the pin wholesale, raise money for their cause while spreading the good news. And so we know about the red poppy and this purple poppy. We just know that that animals have worked alongside, our soldiers and our people who serve.
That's very cool.
In different capacities.
That's very cool. And they're so affordable too. I think it was around $25 per pin. Very, very reasonable, and that money is going to a great, great cause. I just think that's so cool of course I wish you guys so much luck in that vision and that drive. And how cool would it be to, once that's built, to go check that out? I mean, that would become like a destination vacation, right?
Yeah, and you know what is super exciting about it, aside from obviously having to have plaques at the site,
right? Yeah,
we're going to have an interactive app for children and adults, and
cool.
you just go through here on your cell phone, And you can hear stories and learn about all these animals and things in an interesting way. And then it's ever growing and ever changing based on new stories and new things that animals are doing. Like now, COVID, they're helping with COVID, right? So
Right.
I think that, and then we want to educate children, go to the schools, we're working on that. So it's a great way to raise, I think it's a great way to teach patriotism and compassion and educate.
Right. Well, I was going to ask now, because it's making it so hard. You've been in the business now for what, 28 some odd years, right? Getting close to 30 years, to so many, and you have been involved in so many projects. And I was going to just try to pick one. And I was trying to pick one of your projects, and I was like, I can't pick one, because I was like, well, where do I stop? Like, do I ask you about the World War I animal memorial in France? Do we talk about the one in New Zealand? Do we talk about, and there's so many war memorials, but I'm going to let you kind of maybe turn it to you, Susan. And is there one that stands out? Obviously the pledge, but is there one that really stands out to you that was really memorable? Understanding that I'm sure they're all memorable, but
Yeah.
was there one that has really stood out to you in the
Well,
past?
I would like to give you the brief overview, if I may, of a few
Absolutely.
famous ones, and then zero in on one.
Absolutely. Please
That
do.
comes to mind because it was such an unusual one. I did our country's first war dog memorial, Always Faithful. That was unveiled in the Pentagon in 1994, and it was unveiled at the Pentagon, and then it was dedicated at the Marine Corps War Dog Cemetery on Guam. That was the first, and that led me onto this beautiful trajectory and opened my eyes to the military and what they do. And since then done for law enforcement as well. It's some of the famous animals that I've done that have wonderful stories that I encourage you viewers to read about on my website and elsewhere, would be, starting chronologically, World War I. You've got Stubby, our country's first dog of service, who was a stray dog and was, he was found, he was accompanying the troops the ones who were actually in Connecticut, being trained to go into battle in World War I. And he was embraced by Robert Conroy, who was a soldier, was smuggled aboard the ship in France, was discovered. And what saved him was his famous salute that Conroy had taught him, since he had bonded to this dog. And Stubby goes on to save lives and do so much more than a mascot would do. Comes home to a hero's welcome. So that's a little sampling of Stubby. I don't even know how I said that so quickly. There's so much to say,
Right? While you were
You know,
saying that, I pulled them up, and I was completely blown away. Obviously we're going to share that because it's just too cute. But yeah, I'm reading it as well, and I mean, it's completely mind blowing. Where he warned of incoming attacks and gas and artillery. I mean, the list goes on and on. He's
yeah,
like a decorated soldier himself, right?
yeah, yeah.
And it's just crazy.
And World War II, there's the sculpture I did of Smokey, the famous little 4-pound Yorkshire Terrier who was found in a foxhole and trained by Army Corporal Bill Wynn, who is still doing very well, living in Cleveland. I believe he's 98 at this time. We stay in touch. And he trained this dog to do 250 tricks, cheer up the troops, and she saved his life on one occasion, and she potentially saved 250 lives when she was able to pull communication wire through a culvert under an airstrip and avoiding exposure and days of exposure before an oncoming attack. And when she came home, she continued to raise the spirits of those in the hospital. So because of her acts of I'd say, compassion and therapy work. They call her the first therapy dog on record, Little Smokey of World War II. And then as we, there have been so many great dogs. I mean, the great Luca of our time of Iraq and Afghanistan. And there's been, I did Sully, President George H.W. Bush's dog Sully, who's an example of a great assistance animals through America's Vet Dogs. This was the president's service dog for his last 6 months of his life, and it was a tremendous honor to do that. And so when you asked me about going back to a special time, how many minutes do I have?
You can keep on going. I mean, that's and now is that on, where is Sully currently?
Sully, the first casting is at the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum in College Station, Texas.
Very cool. Okay.
We unveiled it for the anniversary of his passing, December 2nd of this past year. And it was a very, very touching story. And our president being such a dog lover and being so kind to share with the world how important a dog can be in the life of somebody who needs that kind of assistance. So, But one of the other incredible experiences that I said, if we have a few minutes, I can share.
Yes, please do.
Go over is when I was commissioned to do 2 bronzes by the Australian War Animals Memorial Organization. It was the first monument to all the animals that have died on the Western Front from World War I. 9 million animals. And that's horses, donkeys, mules, pigeons, dogs, minimum of 9 million animals just on the Western Front.
Right.
And I would say that the experience was something that was so moving. I had been to France before, but when I had gone there, and it's in Pozières, France, it's about an hour and a half northeast of Paris. And as you know, as you go through the countryside in France, you see countless cemeteries of those who, died for freedom and for the freedom of that country as well. And so the placement of this war animal, World War I war animal memorial, is right on a battlefield. And it's right where there was a famous windmill site in Pozières, France, where more Australians have died than ever before. And in Pozières, and that battlefield is just vast farmland, but stunning to see and very, I can't explain it. You feel it. Other people felt it too. It's not just the artist talking. You just, you just felt it, and the vast space, and knowing that animals and our soldiers and on all sides are still there in that battlefield that served beside each other. So that was very poignant. And you ought to see on my website, there's a flyover. It's a stunning image and reminder of the sacrifice. But some amazing things happened during the ceremony, which I thought were memorable and poignant. People had come from all over the world, and there was all kinds of representation, poetry, singing, some speaking, a lot of wreath laying at the site. I had created a rising horse, the upper body with the flying mane, and this is for Australia's animals, and it has in the mane the animals who serve, the dog, the horses, the mules, the donkeys, the pigeons, the horse. This represented in that piece. And the dog head in bronze is for all the animals on all sides who served. And his little tag says, "Our spirits live on." And what was so poignant, I remember we all were feeling the intensity of this this moment, and we saw a plane sort of make a track in the sky, and another plane make another track in the sky, and look like a V, and somebody kind of nudged me next to us, oh, they've had these planes make a V for victory, and I'm looking. And then another plane came right across and made it an A. And it was a coincidence, you might say, of course, but we all noticed it. And Nigel Alsop, who was the president or the organization, choked up at that moment, because for him, it meant a lot of things. First of all, Nigel Alsop, his name is with an A, his last name. His very great uncle, he had found out just 3 years before, had died on that very battlefield trying to save the mules, the mule pack. So it took on a whole new meaning for him personally. And then, of course, A for Australia and A for the animals. And he felt, I think this means that I'm doing something right. So
it's almost that God moment of saying you're doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And if you're curious, all those images are all on her website, and I'm looking at it now, and it's just absolutely, I got goosebumps. It's just absolutely spectacular. So take us through a little bit your acrylics. Now, one of the things I was sharing is that, and there's some behind you, I believe, but they almost look crystal to me. So share with us a little bit about that.
Because when they're lighted, they come to life.
I'm sure, yes.
But I don't have my lights with me.
That's okay. That's okay.
So, well, how it's done, it's a similar process where you work in clay, a mold is made. It's not as many, it's cast in a foundry, not as many steps, but much less forgiving. You can't make changes along the way.
Sure.
So it's a wonderful medium that captures the light and looks different in all kinds of weather settings, day or night. Very dramatic at night, as you can imagine, something glowing at night in your home, and a dimmer. So it's a wonderful ethereal way to express a lot of emotions that I like to express in my art. Which when it comes down to it, a lot of it does come down to love of some kind or another. I mean, certainly I have a love for what I do, or for these animals, for this story, or the person, I think when you learn something and you study it, you learn to love it. Sometimes you don't know it, but once you have to create it, you get to know it. And when you know something, you're able to love it. And then when you love it, hopefully it comes from your soul, your hands, into the clay. So that's.
Oh, sorry.
One more way of expressing it is through that medium. Bronze is a much more practical and appropriate medium for monuments outdoors.
Sure. You were going to share a unique antidote or story that that was, I think, one of the projects that was more unique or problematic. I can't remember which one it was, but
it was the one I wanted to share, not knowing how much time we have. Was the one in France, because to me that represented such a huge, so much loss, and yet how wonderful that 100 years later we were celebrating that. And same thing with Stubby, 100 years later, celebrating Stubby, the great hero of World War I, who was the father, I would say, the doggy father, the original, original dog of service. And so these different projects have moved me forward. There's just a lot of stories. If you want to hear another story, I can tell you the first story that inspired me, which was alluding back to the first monument I did of Always Faithful. you know, I was, what happened was that Dr. Putney, who was the veterinarian ahead of the war dog platoon in World War II, he had seen my work at a dog show. I had done Doberman sculptures, big Doberman show, and fell in love with my work. And I found out who he was, and I was awestruck because even then in 1993, I, unlike most people, was studying the war dogs and was interested in that. So to meet him was just mind-blowing, and what a gentleman, and what interesting person, and knowledgeable. And he said, we want to build a war dog memorial. And so the United Doberman Club helped join forces to select an artist. I applied, and I was so fortunate that I got that commission. Now, I'm just giving you kind of a short version of the evolution of this. So when we unveiled at Pentagon, then we went to Guam. It was amazing to fly down there with the greatest generation. And so many of them had not been back since they were kids. And here they are, so, much in their senior years,
Right.
going back on an airplane, wanting to just remember their dogs. And they'd always, everyone, it's just widespread. Doesn't matter. Like I say, it's timeless. It doesn't have borders. That connection is always there. And so hearing their stories and seeing them lay wreaths at the ceremony, at the tombstones of these dogs who saved their lives and they've never forgotten them to the day they die, that was very moving. And another last piece of that story is the day after I was accompanied by Dr. Putney to go to another ceremony, because our ceremony was part of the 50th anniversary ceremonies of the liberation of Guam. So there was the war dog ceremony and other ceremonies. We went to another ceremony, and Bill pointed down the hill to various spots and explained which battles took place in tremendous detail, and probably what that's like, how it stays in the memory. And as he's telling me all this, and we're surrounded by countless veterans who've all come for these 50th anniversary ceremonies, a woman approached Bill, who he didn't know. She was a Chamorro woman, native of Guam. And she came over with tears in her eyes, and she took his hand, and she said, I just want to thank you so much. You saved my family's life. I was just a child in Guam, and without you, we would have all died. And I just want to say thank you. And I'll never forget that. I really think that really, it just made me feel, wow, what an important job those people in the military do. And here we are, and we're speaking to, generation after generation that's thankful for their service and their sacrifice. And to see that right before my eyes is something I'll never forget. I'll never forget how it felt. So it just opened my eyes. That's what I'm saying. One more time to the service and sacrifice, and that inspired me as an artist.
Wow.
Me. Yeah.
So with that in mind, Susan, obviously, the service member is inspiring you, but who, as an artist, artistically, who is somebody that you have looked up to or inspires you as an artist as you've gone through the years in your craft?
Well, I've traveled. I've gone to the Rodin Museum, and I've loved a lot of the Rodin pieces that I've seen on numerous occasions. Can't wait to go back to
when they open the borders, right?
Yeah, and I always had a lot of respect for artists because we all work so hard, and you can see something good in so much of art around us. I would say that I was impressed by Glenna Goodacre, who recently passed away. She did the Nurses Memorial Memorial, and I learned that she and I sort of have a similar approach or feeling about things, which is that there's so much ugliness in the world. Why not bring some beauty to it? And it's funny, I'd always felt that, but it wasn't until she passed away that I read that she had said that, and I thought, okay, I wish I would have met you, but that's nice to hear, and of course admire her work as well. So that's what comes to my mind.
Beautiful, beautiful. You know, one of the questions I was going to ask you, I kind of probably should have asked you this early on, but why sculpting?
Okay.
You know,
I can tell you that. I should tell you one other person. This is kind of fun.
Go ahead.
I was seated next to somebody at a wedding on purpose, and that person was Felix de Weldon. And Felix de Weldon was already in his mid-90s. He's the artist who did the famous Iwo Jima Memorial.
Oh, okay.
And this was a long time ago after I'd done the War Dog Always Faithful. And I just couldn't get enough of it. He was talking in my ear and telling me all about it. And I was sharing the Always Faithful experience. He liked my work. And I had noticed that in Arlington, he had done over 37, I think, pieces in Arlington and had done that. And I remember at that time thinking, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to have a piece at Arlington?
Coming full circle.
Yeah. But why sculpture? I just gravitated toward that ever since I was like in grammar school. Also, I have an aunt who's a very talented sculptor. And she, just knowing that there's somebody in the family that did that and seeing that, you know, has always been inspiring. Another woman who does beautiful work. And but I liked working with my hands in that way. And so I actually went to school. I got my first piece was in front of a museum, 25 feet tall, back in right into college. And it was a great jumping point, you would think, but I didn't think it was responsible to be an artist, and I needed to get a real job, so I went into television.
Okay.
And that lasted for about 3 years, and then I did a couple of things, and I came back to art, and I'm really an artist. I just need to do it. And that's when I started doing things I knew and loved, which were the dog pieces. And once I saw how well received they were, because I did have to make a living. It's not a hobby.
Sure.
Then I had the courage to pursue it, you know, full force.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Susan, thank you so much for taking time. But before we let you go, where can they go to check out your work or maybe contact you? Be like, oh my God, I have to have Susan maybe contact her about either commissioning a piece or something else. How did they get a hold of you, and where can they check out your work?
On my website is a good jumping point for all my projects, and that is at it's at Bahary Studios, B as in boy, AHARY studios.com.
Beautiful. And social media?
I have Facebook, Bahary Studios Facebook as well. And then the National Service Animals Monument.org, and Facebook is a great place as well to see what we're doing with that. And I'll give you a little surprise tip-off. We're doing my next immediate monument will be Search and Rescue.
Very
the
cool.
Search Dog Foundation. Wanted to do one since 2001. They're incredible volunteers, and they deserve the recognition.
When is the scheduled unveiling?
Well, we're just starting that now. We're just starting the process now. So hopefully within a couple of years, it'll be all, you know, underway.
Well, there's another open invitation to reach out, and we would love to have you back on and talk about that project as well when the unveiling happens. And because not only do we love your work, but I also really believe that it's very important because everybody serves in their own way. And it really helps not only bring education and awareness, not only about service animals, but to the soldiers themselves. It helps bring, and veterans, especially obviously in this case, the female veterans, but I think really all veterans and military members can connect to your work at so many levels. So thank you so much, Susan. And my guest today, Susan Bahary, on the Red, White, and You Show. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.